slated to expire in 10 days. Congress is back in session this week, and it's one of the items that's on the agenda as part of the COVID stimulus bill. Joining us now to discuss it is North Carolina's Republican Congressman Dan Bishop. Congressman, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sean. Glad to be with you.
All right, so tell us where things stand right now in terms of Congress getting together to pass this next bill.
Well, we keep hearing things day by day. We expect to have another bill possibly on the floor by the end of the month. We're hearing about the pieces that might be in it, what its size might be, but it's all very unclear and a little fuzzy at the moment.
Now, you've led this effort to basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the way I read this, is that to make sure that funds don't go to cities to create these autonomous zones. If that's correct, what I'm wondering is, how do you do this where you don't punish the citizens who didn't really do anything about it? A lot of times it's people coming in from outside the city. It's bad leadership inside the city, but it's not necessarily the citizens and the business owners that are responsible.
Sean, I think it's about providing an incentive for local officials to do what is the primary responsibility of government at all levels, and that's to protect the lives and safety of their citizens and their property. So what the bill does that we filed, and Senator Ernst has filed a bill in the Senate that's similar. Ours is called the Chopping Cash for Chaz Act in honor of the autonomous zone in Seattle, but it says that if a city permits an autonomous or anarchy zone to persist more than 7 days, they lose federal funding until they restore until they prove to the Justice Department, show the Justice Department that they've taken appropriate action and what steps they've taken to make sure it doesn't recur. So in the case of Seattle, they get about $3.3 billion in federal funds. It would not be tenable for a city like that to leave citizens undefended, to allow that anarchy and disorder to persist.
What's the response been from the Democrats? Have they supported that act?
You know, we haven't seen Democrat co-sponsors as of yet, but every member of Congress needs an opportunity to decide whether they support anarchy or not. As I said, it doesn't matter at what level of government. Protecting people and making for safe communities is the first duty of government. We do have one other thing that we've done is we're sending a letter to the Office of Management and Budget to do an investigation and see what these cities like Seattle have expended in terms of funding because of the consequence of allowing this dereliction of duty, to allow these zones to persist. And that letter has 20-something co-signers. So I think we're gaining some momentum and we'll get some attention, and we'll see what Democrats say about it. It would be irresponsible in the highest degree to support the sort of lawlessness we've seen go on in these cities.
Yeah, I think that'll get their attention big time. We had Congressman Steve Scalise on yesterday. He said that to some degree, the $600 a week is creating a disincentive for people to work. Let me listen to what he had to say.
We also look and we see the $600 a week that's being paid has become an impediment for workers getting a lot of employees getting their workers back. So we've got to look at all the money that's already been spent. Over $2 trillion is out there. Some of that money still hasn't been spent. Over $100 billion in the Paycheck Protection Program alone, that's still out there.
Now, Senator McConnell has talked about potentially lowering the threshold of eligibility to people who only made $40,000 or less. Do you think that that's a good idea? And do you agree with Congressman Scalise that there's somewhat been a disincentive to get people back to work?
Yeah, I don't think that suggestion by Senator McConnell is a complete solution by any means. I've heard folks talk about maybe restructuring it in some way to get people back to work, provide an incentive or a bonus to get them back to work so they don't see an income level drop, but they're not disincentivized to return to work. But I can tell you, Sean, that this is the single most articulated issue from constituents in my district. I got an email, just another one from somebody else just this morning on this point. Merchants all over North Carolina are telling me that they can't get back to business while the federal government is deterring workers from returning to work. So that cannot be extended in present form as far as I'm concerned. And I believe the Republican conference will speak with one voice about that.
Congressman, if you could say that there was one thing that this bill needs the most to help workers out there and businesses, what would it be?
Well, I think that the big question as we move from being in a state of shutdown to seeing business resume, we need a recovery act. We need to be concerned about whether businesses have the operating capital, the working capital they need, businesses at the lower end. And so in the Small Business Committee on which I sit, Secretary Mnuchin appeared before us the other day, and he was talking about some additional support perhaps for businesses that would be based on how much of a revenue loss they can show. So those that have been injured the worst by the pandemic would be eligible for more support. I think that makes good sense. So that would be, I think, the top thing on the list. The other thing that would be very significant is protecting businesses, protecting schools, protecting from liability from frivolous lawsuits that people will take advantage of the COVID pandemic to begin launching. They already have.
Yeah. You're absolutely, that liability issue across the board, whether it's schools or businesses, is a big one. You're absolutely right. Congressman, best of luck as you guys try to forge ahead with this next COVID bill. I appreciate you joining us and look forward to having you back.
Thanks to both of you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Axios' Jonathan Swan is here to give us his take on the $600 unemployment benefits and whether they should continue. And a little